Hello and welcome to episode number 34. My name is Torsten Tabel. So I have put on the title of this particular episode, Living Now and in the Future. So what really kind of prompted this is, well, life actually and living and what's showing up in my life and how things kind of pop and things don't pop. And it's really about this conversation about how much do we look at the past to create our future. I know this is not a new conversation, but it's really interesting because it really makes me look at different things in my life. And one of the things that it really popped for me this morning is I was looking at some stock charts. And as I was looking at the charts, and I was reading this one post by this guy that I read some of his information. And he looks at all these different things and he always brings up the past, which got me curious at looking at how we use the past to create our future. I'm just going to continue talking about stocks because this was kind of a neat thing. Many of you, maybe this doesn't actually have pertained to anything in your world, but stocks often have, it's a picture, it's a graph basically, and everyone knows what a graph is and everyone can see a graph and you can look at a graph and you have a pretty good sense of what the graph is trying to show you. You know, things go up, things go down, or whatever. So you use these graphs as reference points from the past on how things will look in the future. And in this reality, that's how everything is done. It is linear to a degree. Everyone's looking for patterns. Patterns show up because if things are linear to a degree, there's always going to be patterns. So when you're looking at it from this point, this reality, it's totally logical to look at things in this way. And the cool thing is, it was awareness for me. It wasn't making something wrong. It wasn't making this guy wrong for looking at different chart patterns and using past patterns as something that could potentially show up now. What it did do, it made me aware of how much we use the past to create our reality, period. And if we didn't have a past, what would our future actually look like? Now, these are concepts and they may seem a little bit shall we say, hard to grasp, hard to really get. What is it that I'm actually talking about here? Well, it's actually not that difficult. In fact, it's not difficult at all. It's super, super easy. You simply don't live from your past. If you didn't have a past at all, if you literally had no memory of anything or anybody, what would your world look like every day? If you literally showed up every morning with amnesia, which some people actually do. Now, in this reality, we make that a wrongness. We're like, oh, too bad, that must be terrible. Is it? Or is that just a point of view that we have? So I was really looking at this a little bit more, and what really popped for me was, so if you didn't have a memory of your past, would you choose something different than you're currently choosing? Well, I know for me, that would be a yes. I would choose something completely different. And so I started looking at this, how much does our past actually limit us? And do we not actually even look to creating a future because we're always looking behind us in the past to create something different? It's kind of this thing, it's really the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result. Cool. So what else is possible then? That's kind of what I start looking at. And you may be asking in this moment, okay, so that's cool. I'm starting to get where you're coming from. And how do I actually make that happen? Well, it's really simple. You ask a question, or in this case, probably more than one. So one of the questions that I love using for getting awareness of what our future, by what we choose, what the future will create. And one of those ways of doing that is to ask a question. And the question that I love using in this particular situation is, what might life be like in 5 years from now if I choose this? What might life be like in 5 years from now if I don't choose it? I actually like using 20 years from now. And you ask, why 20 years? Well, your mind is quite unique in being able to kind of go a little bit in the future and try to figure stuff out. It can do that to a point. 5 years, 20 years, it can't. It literally can't function to formulate what exactly, if you made this choice now, what your life would be like in 20 years. It can't do that. Your awareness does. Your awareness actually knows, because your awareness essentially doesn't have time. Time doesn't exist in it. There is no past, there is no present, there is no future. There's literally just is. And so when you play with that, you can get awareness of what that creates. So by asking that question, what might life be like in 20 years from now if I choose this, and what might life be like in 20 years from now if I don't choose this, you use your awareness of like, oh, what actually creates more expansiveness in your world. That will give you information. You still have total choice to choose whatever the heck you want. And how often do we actually live in this way? Well, I can say for myself, not as much as I could. I can always choose more. I can always ask more questions. And I can always look at my life in a way that I'm always asking about what will create more for everyone. So it's not only in your own future, but for everyone. Now that's a very different question to ask too. So these are the things that I like to play with a lot, and I know I can play with them more. I could choose them. I could ask them for just about everything, every single thing I'm looking at choosing, and I don't. And the cool thing about that is that I know I can actually choose way more than I actually do right now. And always also acknowledging how much I do ask questions. And often I will not necessarily cognitively ask the question. It'll be more the sense of the space of being, the sense of being the space of what else is possible, what will this create if I choose this. And so playing with these kinds of things, these are the things that we can use every single day for everything. And you can use it for what you would consider something maybe really mundane, like, if I buy this gum, what will my life be like in 5 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now? If I don't buy this gum, what will my life be like in 5 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now? You can literally ask that question for everything you're looking to choose in your life. And what could show up? How much awareness would you get out of asking that question for literally everything? So these are things that actually create a completely different future, a completely different way of being, a completely different way of living, and a completely different way of showing up in the world. What would it be like to actually do that? Would you like to choose that? You don't have to. By no means do you actually have to choose that. I'm just saying, here's another possibility you can play with. It may actually create some amazing change in your life, and you might actually have more fun doing it. Or it could just do what you're doing now. So it's really interesting when I look at these things and realize how much we use our past to limit us, how much I've used my past to limit me. And there are times where things change, things show up in a different way. I'm going to use the topic of money because money is such an awesomely tangible thing for most people in this reality, in the fact that they don't actually have it, or at least not as much as they'd like to have. So, what if we use that as a way of playing in this reality? If we used money, because people like results, they like to see what changes in their world. Well, have you ever acknowledged, by asking these kinds of questions, how your money flows actually changed? Is there a correlation? I would invite you to look at that. See if it's actually real. How much do things change when you actually ask more questions and be more in the question? Does your financial world change? Because as you are more in the question, you can't actually be in the conclusion that we normally always are. I'm certainly great at being in the conclusion. And that's changing all the time. I ask more questions. I don't agree and align with other people's points of views. I just look at what is. And I'm willing to be more aware and be more willing to see what is, instead of having a conclusion about what I think things should be. And so you ask, well, how do you know the difference between whether you're in conclusion or whether you are actually aware of what is? Well, when you're aware of what is, you don't actually have a point of view. It doesn't matter. There's no charge on it. You're just like, whatever. Oh, this is what it is. Oh, cool. And you're just aware. When you have a conclusion, you have a point of view. You have a charge. It must be this way. And you generally have a reason for it probably as well, which is a reason and justification for your conclusion, so that you must be right. So we do these really, really beautifully insane things, and they are really magnificent in my world. It's magnificent because we are able to create all these crazy things that we've learned, and we've actually been able to implement them to screw up our lives instead of just being us. And by looking at the past, that really keeps all those things in place, instead of just being us, instead of you just being you, me just being me. I get to show up here, I get to be me, I get to talk about stuff and sometimes ramble, and it's ridiculous, and it's kind of interesting. So it is about acknowledging what you're aware of and what else you can change. And how much do you actually change the world by being different, by being you? In this very moment, I could go into like 10,000 different tangents, but I'm going to bring it back to money and the future and creating your living now and in the future. So there's this thing that I did the other day. I'm a little behind on my taxes. I've been avoiding it. And so anyways, I was adding up on the last 2 years, 2016, 2017. And I was looking at how much money I made. And so, I know money is sometimes a taboo subject, and I don't ever have a problem with talking about it because they're just numbers, and it's just people use it as a reference point, which is kind of cool, and it just goes to show what else is possible, I guess. And so in 2016, I didn't make a heck of a lot of money. In fact, I have never made a lot of money most of my life. It's not that I haven't had it; it's just something that didn't show up that much. So last year in 2016, I made $20,000, and which is, not a lot. It's just enough to get by, or for most people, it isn't even that. I also have this really, really amazing ability to live on next to nothing. I've done it for many, many years. I've used it for traveling. I've traveled all over the world. I've lived in many different places in the world, and I'm really good at living on literally nothing. I'm extremely good at doing that, and that's starting to change. So what was interesting was then in 2017, I more than doubled that. I made $52,000. And I haven't checked to see where I'm at on 2018. But anyway, so why am I saying this? Why am I talking about this? Well, it gives information. And in 2015, mid to late 2015 is when I started doing Access. And my life changed a lot. And it continues to change. And I continue to choose more of me. And in doing so, things change. One of those things is money just shows up. And I was actually surprised by how much difference my inflows are. Now, for a lot of people, making 52 grand is nothing. It's not a lot of money. I get it. It isn't actually. In the big picture of things, it's nothing. It's peanuts, really chump change for a lot of people. And it was neat because there was an acknowledgement that it increased more than I more than doubled what I made from one year to the next. So what else is possible? What else can you create? What else can we all create? What does actually asking questions and being in the question create? Well, it creates a different reality. It creates you. It creates your reality. And what would you like to create? What would you like to show up? What is your future actually about? What is your desire for your future? Now, future is something that we don't often talk about, and we often put it into terms that are very physical, like, oh, I want to, double my income next year or something like that. Cool. And what else? Because there is way more to it than that. So if you could choose your future, if you could choose anything for your future, and you might jump right into your logical mind and go, and what would be super uncomfortable and way, way, way beyond your current reality? Which would be considered beyond this reality? What would you like to create? What would you desire to create? Okay, you can do some insane amount of money or whatever, a car, house, whatever, travel, all those kinds of things. Cool, awesome. I really encourage that. And what else? Is there actually a certain energy that you can't even put words to or any definition to that you would like to create, that you know it's possible? Have you even looked at that? Have you even considered to look at that? Well, maybe now is the time to look at your future, because your future could be completely different and you don't even realize it in this very moment. What if your future could be way beyond anything you ever considered? What if your future, anything actually is possible? So this is something that I love to play with and I love to look at. And I love to insert this into people's worlds, into the possibility of changing what they see as possible now. What if you could have total ease in creating anything you'd like to create in your world? What if you could have total ease actualizing whatever you'd like to create in the world? Have you ever actually even looked at that? And maybe that's not your desire. So what is your desire? What is it? What is, and maybe it's not just an it, what is the energy that you would like to create for your future. And get a sense of that. And now go on actually creating of it. Because you are now aware of the energy of what you would like your future to be like. You have no idea of the how. And the how is totally unimportant. This may be shocking to some of you. What do you mean the how is unimportant? When you follow the energy, the how shows up. And you ask me, yes, but what if I don't know what the energy is? Well, you actually do. You just found out. You just became aware of it. And for some of you, it may not be a conscious awareness, and that is cool. You're still aware of the energy. And when the light bulb goes off, you're like, oh, that's it. I got to follow this. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know how it's going to show up. I'm going to follow this. And likely it will be extremely non-linear. Let me say that one more time. It's likely going to be extremely non-linear. In other words, it won't make any sense whatsoever. Is this getting exciting yet? It is for me. And what else is possible with it? What else can you create with it? What future can you create that you never, ever thought was possible? And what if that actually was? I know in looking at my past, I realize how actually small I have made my world. And for some people, they may not see that as so. And yet, from what I actually know of what is possible, my world is tiny. It's not a wrongness, it's not a rightness, it's just an awareness. I have no charge on it. I'm like, wow, I have a small world, cool, awesome. So what else can I create? And it's like, oh, I can create so much more. I can be so much more of me that I've never actually chosen. And so this is what my rambling is about today. It is this choosing more of me and being aware that the future is possible and that we don't need to reference our past to create it. In fact, your past is going to limit you dynamically. So what if you were never looking back, ever, and only looking forward from the point where you currently are and asking, what else is possible? If I choose this, what will my life be like in 20 years from now? If I don't choose it, what will my life be like in 20 years from now? And if I choose this, will it create more for everyone? And with those awarenesses and asking those questions all the time, what else can you create? What else in your world is actually possible? What if you didn't hold on to all the limitations you've been using in the past to stop yourself? I wonder what else you can choose now. And so with that, I am going to call it a day. Thank you everyone so much for watching for now and in the future. And what else is possible? Have an awesome week or whatever it is, or whenever you were watching it. And for everyone that's watching it now, thank you for showing up. Thank you for being a part of this. And what else can you choose? And please leave comments about what this creates in your world and what else is possible and how much fun you can have with it. So Have a wonderful week, everyone, and I will see you again next week. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you later. Bye.